Joining me is Vaishali, who is the market manager at Flightbase. And we have our special guest and BVLOS expert, Akaki Kunchulia, with us. With more than 20 years of experience in the aviation field, he started an aviation career in the Republic of Georgia as an air traffic controller. Since 2014, Mr. Kaki has supported FAA and NASA on multiple programs such as US Traffic Management, FAA, and NASA Emerging Technologies branch, mostly in advanced air mobility fields. Since 2020, Akaki has led the detect and avoid technology efforts for electro-optical and radar technologies, contributed more than 20 US operational waivers within US and Canada. It's great to have you here, Akaki. With this, I hand over the stage to you.
Thank you. I'm a little bit humbled with the introduction, but okay, let's go. Let's dive in. Let's go into next slide, please. Okay, so what I want to talk about today is mostly basically we have Part 107. Everyone knows this Part 108 is coming. It's on the horizon. Everyone is expecting that. So kind of like what to expect and what to not expect, and so on. So first of all, why do we need this Part 108 rule, right? Like people are, a lot of people, thousands of people are flying with Part 107 rule, and then it's perfectly fine for them, right? Like if you're a hobbyist or if you're, I don't know, videographer, so on and so on, it's perfectly fine for those kind of operations. But Part 107 is mostly for the VLOS. It's actually for VLOS operations, so visual line of sight, right? And it's mostly for this like small scale operations. If there are set of certain parts in 107 which can be waived, and then you apply to the FAA, and then those regulations could be waived. One of them is BVLOS, and let's say ops over people, right? 107, 31, and 39. Or you can get a waiver for the altitude. Yeah, this is also mostly for below 400 feet AGL operations. So basically, if you want to fly BVLOS, you apply for this waiver. But and then a lot of people are doing. I've done a bunch. Probably our listeners have also done those waivers and obtained them. But usually, what we see is that these waivers are pretty geographically located, and they're constrained, and then usually they come with this like provisions, right? Like you have to do A, B, C, D, and then you have to comply with that, and then after that basically you can fly. And then what we are seeing actually with a couple of companies, they even obtained non-geographical specific locations, which is actually really good sign that we're improving and going into like a larger scale operations, but still it is like for smaller operations. And kind of the main kind of caveat with 107 is that it is not suitable for large scale operations, specifically for like commercial operations like package delivery or geographically diverse operations and so on. So, let's say if you want to do a package delivery, if you're a company, hey, you have to go and obtain Part 135 operation certification, which is not cheap, I would say, not cheap for sure. So it's like for small operators, it is a pretty big burden. So with all of these, I think FAA, based on the industry feedback and kind of, I guess, like a pressure from everyone, because like everyone wants to fly BVLOS, right? Like that's what they say, like that's where the money is, right? Like kind of what people are saying. So for that reason, next slide, please. Okay, so for that reason, FAA decided there was even BVLOS ARC, Aviation Rulemaking Committee, which provided its recommendation basically to develop this new rule specifically for BVLOS. And then basically FAA last year kind of officially announced that they will be working on the specific Part 108 BVLOS rule. So what we know at this point that NPRM should be out by the end of the, well, should have been out by August, but it's not out. So we're anticipating that it's going to come out probably sometime end of 2024 or beginning of 2025. NPRM is notice for proposed rulemaking. So basically, it is, to explain in simple terms, it is kind of like a draft version of the regulation, right? Like, so FAA or any other agency in the government comes out with this draft version, and then it says like, hey, public, we're thinking about this. Here's our draft version. And then we're accepting the comments from the industry, from community, even like actually like individual people can also comment on that. So usually the NPRM, once they publish official NPRM, the comment period is usually 30 to 60 days. I would anticipate it would be around 60 days for this NPRM. And believe it or not, it will be a lot of comments. So I would say in thousands, even in tens of thousands. So can you imagine basically them collecting all these messages, all these comments, and then trying to adjudicate these comments and then trying to kind of, and then I guess they won't please everyone, but they'll see what is industry thinking, what is where are people thinking, what are like small communities are thinking about this. So eventually, basically, after this, all these comments, they're going to issue this final rule. That, you know, this comment, them working on these comments, you can imagine, right? Like it would be, I would be pretty happy if the final rule comes out sometime in 2025, but I don't know. So it will be a lot of work on their end. So we have to have our kind of expectations about that. So today, what I want to talk about is also like what to expect in this new rule and what to not expect. And with a grain of salt, these are kind of like all my assumptions on my experience, the people I'm talking with, and so on and so on. So, you know, some of these might be all true, or I hope not all wrong, but kind of like these are my and some of my colleagues' expectations. So what maybe most of you might be interested is that you've seen maybe on LinkedIn or on social media or on the news that FAA kind of really started this shielded operation waiver approvals. So what we are thinking is that in some way, this shielded operation, the definition of this shielded operation will be in this rule, saying that, hey, if you're in this area, if you know, if you're at this distance, probably, yeah, you're in this shielded operation framework. So then, you know, you're good to go. You don't need the DA and so on and so on. I'll talk about the shielded operations more in coming slides. For those operations which still require the DA, the tech and wood technology, what is the anticipation is that it will be probably required if you are required to have a DA technology on board or on ground or so on. Probably it will you'll be asked to be compliant with I would say at least with the ASTM the DA performance standard, and it may be and or RTCA DO365 DA standard. With the ASTM standard, it comes also with kind of like a sister standard to that, the test methods for the DA performance standard. So probably, yeah, that would be that thing that, hey, if you have a radar or if you have, I don't know, some other system on board, on ground, if you want to be compliant or if you want to fly by Part 108, you should be compliant with this standard. So compliance with the standards, like means of compliance and so on, that's kind of different different story, but yeah, like you have to comply basically with the standard. Another thing, what is coming, probably coming, and what we've seen in some of the exemptions, like latest exemptions, is that mode C veil. I'm going to explain. Maybe not everyone knows the mode C veil. It's usually this like 30 nautical mile radius around the big airports in U.S. like San Francisco or like Southern California or like Dallas, Texas, and so on, right? So there's this 30 nautical mile area. And then in this area, well, there are a bunch of other things, but one of the provision is that everyone operating in mode C veil should be equipped with a DSP out, and they should be basically providing their position to other people. So with that in mind, it could be something like a less strict requirement in mode C veil, where you might be only needed to have cooperative sensor only and not worry about the non-cooperative. Again, this is like a speculation, but what I want to say is like basically operating in mode C veil will probably help you to mitigate all the other risks, right? So technically and even legally, not everyone, everyone should be ADSB out equipped in that area. There are some bunch of exemptions to this ADSB out rule, you know, that could be like military or other agencies which could operate there. Then you have to worry about those. Like, how do you mitigate those? You know, hey, maybe then you need a non-cooperative sensor and so on. But again, like being in mode C veil helps. Probably there will be some kind of mention of this in this new rule. Next slide, please.
Kaki, a quick question. We have a lot of different kind of audience who are not well versed with the terms from the aviation industry. So if you could help us define what are the RTCA standards, if you can elaborate a bit. Yeah.
Sure. So RTCA is a standard development organization, which specifically for UAS, they're more focused on the operations in controlled airspace in the terminal areas above 500 feet operations, and mostly for the larger UAS. So like those big drones, you know, some of the military style drones, right, the big ones. So, but the ASTM and then RTCA standards, I love them. They're very complex, but they're very, very detailed. They tell you what to do and how to do. So comparing this to the ASTM standard is a performance standard. And then to explain the simple way, it's ASTM kind of tells you, and it's mostly focused for below 500 feet operations. And then ASTM kind of tells you like, hey, here's my requirement that you have to meet, like, let's say like this risk ratio, right? But the way you prove this to the regulator, to yourself or some third party assessor or so on, it's kind of up to you. So you can bring on like multiple different mitigations, you know, like your visions, like, hey, I think that I do this and this is right. So ASTM gives you that flexibility that, you know, you can provide your arguments to meet the certain requirements. So kind of in a very simple way, ASTM is mostly focused under 500 feet operations, and RTCA is mostly for bigger UAS above 500 feet.
Got it. Thanks a lot.
It helps, yeah. Okay, so one thing, so again, some of the assumptions what we might expect, right? So ground risk, and whoever maybe applied for the waivers, they probably encountered this. Basically, what areas you overfly, right? Like, is it a urban area, suburban area, rural area? What's the population density in these areas, and so on and so on. So right now, it is very, very loose definitions from the FAA. Like, you have to go to maybe like some census, get the census data, and so on. So what we anticipate is that we'll have more granular definitions of the population density. So we won't have necessarily like urban, like rural. You will have more categories. So this will also help us as operators, that then we can really kind of like draw the trajectories where, let's say you are approved to fly over, I don't know, population density of like 200 people per square mile, right? So that way you could, if you have this grid on the map, then you can draw this line around with your trajectory and then basically fly over there. So this is very good thing, yeah, because sometimes, you know, like some areas are urban and or rural, and you know, like they're not anymore because like it's been developed, and some of these maps are like pretty old, so there's like very big disconnect there. Another thing, what is probably coming is this associated elements. A couple of years ago, FAA issued this memo about associated elements. So this is kind of the definition of that, right? Those elements that are not airborne or directly affixed to an uncrewed aircraft system and are necessary to interact with a UA for safe initiation, conduct, or termination of flight for all normal, abnormal, or emergency operations. So what is this basically is that if you're going with a type certification or any other UAS related or UAV related issues, so these associated elements are those elements which are not airborne. So these are not things which are not flying. So let's say you have a ground-based radar, right? Or you have some sort of like C2 communication station. You might have some weather station and so on. All of these are associated elements. And then why I really like this is that basically regulator says that, hey, whatever is flying is totally different. And then these associated elements, they're not necessarily like upon the certification and so on, you probably will get some kind of operational approval for these, let's say, weather station. And what is good is also that technically, let's say I don't know, let's say I provide weather data in Savannah, Georgia, right? So if I get this operational approval from the regulator, then I can sell basically this service to company A and company B. So I like these companies should not be going with it to the regulator with the same company which is providing already this service. So it is very good, and then it also opens the door for like a different businesses, like in UTM USS framework, where you know these companies can sell their services. Next slide, please. Okay. So something about the connectivity and conflict management probably, and this is what I'm really thinking, like, I don't know if it's coming or not, but I still put this on this slide. So there is a lot of work going on in this V2V, like vehicle-to-vehicle communication. There is, you know, like, let's say, like ACAS system, or for small drones, it's ACAS SXU, like drones communicated with each other and so on and so on. But, and a lot of standard development organizations and like NASA and even FAA, they're working on this V2V. They call it actually V2X, so vehicle to X to anything, right? Like it could be ground, it could be cloud, it could be like onboard in-air vehicles. So some sort of maybe a mention of this V2V communication will be in a Part 108. I don't anticipate, so these technologies still, like the standards are like, I think they're just starting to develop them. So I don't think this hard requirement will be there. I think it's for coming years and maybe decades. So, but there will be something about probably, maybe not, but in this some requirement for a V2V communication. Another thing, what is actually I'm really happy and hoping to about this requirement, probably if it comes. It's the software, basically any software what is used in the drone operation, right? And then honestly, right now in the waivers, I see it, and then it's really like this kind of like a gray area where nobody really knows how to handle this. So the thing that what I'm talking about is that usually, and then in a drone industry, we all know that, that the software development process is very, very fast, right? Like they could be like half a dozen updates to software per year, right? Like in any given software for the drones. So when you're making the software updates, right? Like what are these updates? Are they major? Are they minor? Like how do they affect actual UAS operations? The main thing is also who is performing these updates. Can the operator, let's say Flightbase just sends out update patch, right? Like, and then they update by themselves, or it's done remotely. Like who is doing what? So right now it's kind of like gray zone. And I think if we get more clarity on these, and then more approved people or companies or entities doing this, it would be really, really helpful. Because you might get a waiver for one version, then maybe like you're already on like version 20 of that, right? Like some new capabilities come in. So, it's, usually the updates, they bring new things and new capabilities. So like, how really does it really affect your operation? So like some kind of clarity, some kind of like baseline for these, I think it's really necessary. I was always concerned about this, and hopefully something maybe like very baseline comes in this field, and that would be like really helpful for everyone. Another thing, probably what is going to be mentioned is this third-party services like UTM, USS. We all know or remember that UTM framework graphic, right, from like almost like 10 years ago, when like this UTM services provide some auxiliary functions for the UAS operators. So most probably, if you're flying BVLOS, you will be asked to participate in UTM. This way you will be, or at least you will be deconflicting with some other UAS operators. And then we've seen now, actually, a couple of weeks or a month ago, was this like successful demonstration in Dallas area where two companies, they deconflicted with each other using UTM services, which is a great start. So probably something like that is coming. I think even in UTM ConOps, FAA mentioned that you have to be participating in UTM for BVLOS. Again, this is going to be a rule. It's not a ConOps. So if it goes here, it will be like hard requirement. So same goes not only for conflict resolution, but for like, let's say for weather, let's say for C2 services, let's say for obstacle database. I don't think that all these areas will be codified that you have to have them, but at least I would say maybe like traffic management, maybe somehow you have to participate in that. That's kind of, yeah, what I expect in this field. Next slide, please. Okay, so yeah, what not to expect. So this is maybe I'll go on like a little bit negative side here, but to face the really reality is that, and again, this is my expectations and my assumptions. I don't think that we're gonna have like, we publish BVLOS rule 2025 and 2026. We have these millions of drones in the sky. I don't see that. So I don't think that everyone can really still fly a BVLOS. I think still, like you have to have a knowledge, you have to have a documentation, you have to have good, piloting and so on, like flight operations, that to conduct the BVLOS and to comply with this rule, right? Still, it's not that like we still have to somehow comply with this 91.113b rule, right? So it's like see and avoid. It will be some sort of this like electronic human eye, right, or something. So basically, it's either radar or something. Something has to detect a threat, or the crewed aircraft, and then somehow you have to avoid it. So that that's elephant in the room, and you have to deal with that somehow. I don't expect that it will be like less scrutiny from the regulator. I would say it would be more streamlined, more defined requirements from the regulator saying like, hey, go comply with these, ABC, and then if you're good with that, then you can fly. But you still have to do your homework. Like, it's not that like we're all gonna like fly. And I don't still think that there will be some restrictions for the airspace and geographical areas where you can fly. Probably in most cases, yes, if you're complying with everything, you can fly kind of mostly everywhere, but still there will be restrictions. So kind of expect that also. So that's kind of like, again, that's all my anticipation. I don't know, like, I hope I'm wrong and we can all fly BVLOS and millions of drones, but just have your expectations. Like, it's going to be a process, and everyone, like including me, including flight bays or operators, we have to do our homework. Like, we have to show that we're serious about that, about the BVLOS, and it's not trivial thing to do. And then I think like, if we comply with the rule, with the regulations, sky's the limit. Next slide, please. Okay, so yeah, this is what I also wanted to talk about. It's this like shielded drone, dock drone operations, right? So at this point, we don't necessarily have any specific definition of the shielded. What does shielded mean, right? So we, in the latest version of this ASTM-DA standard, there is actually a definition for that, but that's again, that's in a standard. It's not necessarily what regulator deems applicable. So it could be something around that, but kind of how it is defined in ASTM is this operating volume where the competent authority, like regulator FAA, accepts that the UA are well clear and DA may not be required. So it could be still required, but like as a default, they're saying like, okay, you're well clear. So and crewed aircraft normally will not fly in this volume because of regulatory limitations or because crewed aircraft yield to characteristics of the environment in the interest of safety. So very like trivial definition is that, hey, if you're flying, let's say you're doing a cell phone tower inspection, and then if you're within 50 feet or let's say 100 feet of this obstruction, right, man-made obstruction, you are in this shielded airspace, and then you are automatically well clear of any crewed aircraft. So technically, crewed aircraft should not be below 500 feet in a regular area, and then also 500 feet from any man-made obstacle, infrastructure and so on. So yes, they shouldn't be there, but there are some occasions when they're there. But that is what is coming in here is that, hey, if I am in this bubble of like, and what is also what I didn't mention is like, we don't necessarily know what's gonna be the size of this shielded in the new rule, even if it's there, right? So it's going to be 50 feet. Is it going to be 100 feet? So we've seen, and I think next slide, please, where we have, I think what some of the, okay, yeah. Okay, types of operations, right? So yeah, construction site, critical infrastructure inspection, long linear infrastructure inspection. There are these use cases where here, like, you can be in this bubble and then you're like well clear of other traffic. And I think what is, again, the expectation is like and that's my opinion, and I'm very firm in that opinion, that there is, from the regulator, there is still a need of pilot either on or in the loop. So again, I've been to like numerous, like expos and so on, and everyone is talking about autonomous operations and everything, right? Like, I understand that's marketing and everything, but like what we have to keep in mind, and actually like autonomy is not a good word with a regulator. Like they don't like that word, because like to really somehow certify autonomy is really hard process. Like, and then regulators like really like kind of to know what to expect. And then again, the autonomy is, we can maybe use the highly automated or highly autonomous operations, and which honestly most of these operations are, right? Like probably most of you guys, they just click the button, you already have a trajectory, and then it flies by itself, which I do also with my drone. So yeah, that's totally fine. But I think there will always, not always, maybe not in like 100 years, but in nearest future, in coming years, in 5 to like 10 years, I still anticipate that there will be some sort of human in the loop or on the loop requirement. And it could be also that I don't, how to say, okay, so basically there will be, we already still have multiple end-to-end, right? Like multiple drones with like one pilot or one manager or so on, right? So one person can control or manage multiple drones, and that's perfectly fine with me. That's, I think, acceptable, and that's how it should be, right? And that's kind of how a lot of people say that that's how will they make money, right? So that's perfectly fine. Like you are a manager of this fleet, and then you're managing them. If something happens, then that's where you are on or in the loop, and then you're taking action. So again, maybe I'm like a little bit negative here, but I just want to set the expectations for everyone that these fully autonomous operations is I don't know, like I hope I'm wrong, but kind of set your expectations. We're gonna get there at some point with especially with this AI development this last past year, couple of years. So, but yeah, so far we still need some humans in the loop. Okay, and next slide. Okay, so I actually scrapped through FAA database and then try to identify some of those, like a shielded drone dock operations where FAA issued, and like what are the kind of like highlights, right? So, and then these are just like some of the highlights, not all of them, but like some things what I wanted to talk about. So most of them in the provisions, in the technical and operational provisions, FAA really requires that you have to be on this like pre-planned routes, right? Like exactly know where you are flying, where you're departing, where you're landing, and so on. So that is kind of like as a default requirement. Same goes with the geofence, right? Like, yes, absolutely, you need to have a geofence. You should be like really strict about that. So like, don't fly someone's backyard. Well, if you want to fly, yes, but basically make sure you're flying wherever you're flying. One thing actually, what is interesting is like in most of the waivers, it says that if you're operating basically in US, the FAA is in US, right? So RPIC probably could be remote, but they should be located in continental US. So some of you like thinking about this maybe like remote operations, that is the requirement. Maybe it's gonna change in the future. Maybe it could be outsourced to somewhere else, but like that really was a theme in this waiver approvals, that there was like a requirement there. And you have to make sure that takeoff landing site is clear of obstacles and humans, kind of like standard practice, right? So what I was talking about, this like distance, right? So UAV, some of the initial the shielded drone docked waivers, they started with a 50 feet. It's either basically 50 feet above ground level or 50 feet from the obstruction or obstacle. But then some of the recent ones, basically this distance increased to 100, and even I just saw like the 200 feet. So again, that's not the rule. That's not like that everyone can get it. They probably have like a bunch of other mitigations there. But like what I'm seeing is that basically anywhere from 50 to 200 feet. So you might then be requested to have some sort of other mitigations and so on and so on. But yeah, that's from the database. Yeah, next is basically operations should be conducted only on the UAS and only on the decking station that was identified in the ConOps. So you cannot really swap, the hardware. So you have to use the same one. But again, what is the gray area here is like, what if you change software, right? Like, what if you update the software? That is kind of a gray point. So that's what I was talking in the upcoming rule. Maybe that is coming kind of more, at least give us some baseline, maybe notify the regulator or so on. The docking station should have sufficient lighting for like mostly for the landing, right? Like if some UAS are using like some kind of like a QR code or something to land or and so on, it should be sufficiently lit. And for other humans or other intruders in the area to like clearly see that there's something there, like not to intrude with the operations. I think, do I have any more slide or? Oh, yes. Yeah. The main one. So, yeah, this waiver application process, right? Like, to be really candid, it's hard and it's easy, honestly. Like, depends who you ask, right? So, it's like you have to do what I was talking about. That you have to do your homework, right? Like to obtain this waiver. Let's say what we're talking here, like 107 waiver, right? And I fully anticipate that like next year or maybe even I don't know, once the 108 comes in, it will have a waiver process there, but for sure next year, and probably I anticipate this coming years, we'll still have these 107 waivers, right? So you have to do your homework, right? Like you have to have this documentation package of like this is, I would say, like a very minimum, or maybe you can omit something or you can add, but like you have to have your concept of operation, right? You have to do your safety case, like all this documentation, you have to at least have that. And again, it depends on your type of operation, how, like what's the scale of your operation, right? Like if you're really doing like a package delivery, like your major package delivery company, yeah, you probably have to have like even like 3 times more documents than this. But if you're very small, I don't know, some kind of like power line inspection in like in the county, right? So you have very small operations. So you won't probably necessarily have like 300-page training or maintenance manual, right? But at least you have to have it, and then try to update that, and then try to work and enrich it. So again, fortunately or unfortunately, FAA requires this document, and then they review it, they give you comments on that. Make sure that at least you're meeting some kind of like a minimum requirements, right? If you want to go more advanced operations, go for it, and then have more advanced level of your documentation package. Yeah, I think this was definitely my last slide.
Yeah, that's great, Akaki. A lot of information for the audience to, to learn about how they can proceed towards applying waivers. And it is really important, as you did in your session, to set expectations, to know what is coming while applying for these waivers, because it helps define what kind of resources you would need from your team to get these waivers, and of course, the time it will take for you to get these waivers. So thanks a lot for the detailed walkthrough. With this, now I would hand over the stage to Vaishali, and she will talk about what, again, on the lines that Akaki mentioned, there are certain things from the software and that needs to be there in order to get these BVLOS waivers. And Vaishali will go through a few of these features. Yeah, over to you, Vaishali.
Hi everyone. Welcome again to the show. I've always been on the other side moderating the show, but this time I'm going to share how and what Flightbase is doing from the software standpoint to make the BVLOS waiver and as well as approval process simpler, the entire compliance process simpler. And thanks again, Akaki. I think ever since the BVLOS ARC committee released the proposed regulation, everybody is wondering, what is going to come up. And there's always been like the last show that we just visited commercially, there was so much questions and chatter around it. And thanks for clarifying a lot of conceptions or misconceptions that people might have had with these proposed regulations. And I think everybody is expecting it to be released soon. So let's hope, it'll be favorable for BVLOS operations because there's so much potential that can be unlocked with it. And yep, coming back to what are we doing from the software standpoint? As with more autonomous operations, there's a lot of seriousness that needs to be involved. And there's a requirement for far higher safety standards as well as risk mitigation that is going to be required as compared to any human in the loop operations or VLOS operations. And therefore, Flightbase, we've built the entire software with a lot of safety components at the core. And today I'm going to just walk you through some of them. Where how we are enabling both safety, flight safety, as well as compliance with the regulatory requirements. So starting off with geofences and no-fly zones. Ajinkya, if you could switch the slide. Yeah, so remote operators can designate a flight area and for the device and ensure that the drone does not breach this designated area. Similarly, no-fly zones can also be set up and uploaded onto the dashboard to ensure that the drone does not enter any kind of restricted space. Moreover, users can actually sync or load these zones onto the drone so that in case there are any kind of failures, they should continue to work. So any kind of link failures that come up, these zones will still be valid and the drone will not enter these unrestricted spaces. Now that all the zones are demarcated, in the next slide we'll see how in Flightbase dashboard you can autonomously create dynamic flight paths. And then yes, and it'll avoid all these no-fly zones autonomously in every mission. So it'll create missions that even if you're sending a go-to location or if you're creating any kind of missions on the go, it'll still avoid these no-fly zones and dynamically create a smart flight path for your operation. And this is very crucial for because similarly, again, in the next slide, we'll show how Flightbase has a lot of checks and balances in place. For example, if the drone is landing on the docking station, and as well as, okay, before that, pre-flight checklist. So, for example, as an operator, remote operator, they need to run a lot of checks before they can actually run the operation. So we have a complete set of checklists that they need to go through to start or begin the operation. So that is something that is very essential, one of the basic requirements that is required to get the BVLOS approval, and that is something that Flightbase dashboard provides. Moving on to fail safe. So like I mentioned that in case, for example, the drone is unable to land onto or come back in the docking station, users can receive these alerts, as well as they can predetermine or preset certain actions. So if you want the drone to hover until the remote operator takes control, or if you want the drone to land in a safe site, all of these fail safes can be set from beforehand. What happens in case the link is lost? What action should the drone continue to do? All of these can be set from beforehand to ensure ultimate or safety for your drone operations. In the next slide, moving on, we are going to showcase that how Akaki mentioned, how mitigating ground risk is going to become very important. And one of the key ways in which it can be done is via integration of parachutes. So we are bringing in integration. We've already added integration with AVS's parachute. In fact, recently AVS's has already recently received the FAA MOC for both Category 2 and Category 3 operations. So for flight over people, it will become much simpler for anybody with the parachute integration to get BVLOS approval. Moving on, we also provide a lot of air risk mitigation methods. So one of the key ways in which we are doing so is integration with detect and avoid systems. So we have integrations. We are trying to provide integrations with all kinds of detection systems like radar-based, visual systems, even counter-drone systems, so that you have complete visibility of your operating airspace. And you can constantly detect any cooperative or non-cooperative aircrafts, and you'll get an alert in case somebody, some other aircraft comes in the vicinity of your operating airspace. So some of the integrations that we already have in place are with D-Drone, UAVionics, and Senhive. So all of these are different systems, detect and avoid systems that we currently support. We are also bringing in a few other integrations soon, so keep a check out on our socials. Again, moving on. So to ensure that no two aircrafts collide mid-air, there's another feature that we have recently, or functionality that we have recently introduced, which is the go to safe altitude, the GTSA functionality, where this helps you maintain a safe distance with any kind of commercial aircrafts. So for example, you are flying at an altitude of 380 feet, and there is another aircraft, a commercial aircraft, that's operating at 420 feet. So to ensure a separation between the two aircrafts, Flightbase, with the help of GTSA, will autonomously reduce the altitude of your drone to maintain that kind of separation. So this is something that we've done to bring in more safety in the operation. And moving on, we in the next slide, we can also see that we're bringing in integration with beacons. So you can turn on or turn off the beacon when you're flying in low light or night conditions. Again, very important for mitigating air risks, so that there's always a visual alert system that's in place, and other aircrafts in the vicinity or visual observers can constantly monitor this and find out where the drone is. This is a big feature that's again coming in. And so these were some key features that we've built in for both from the compliance side as well as for ensuring safety. But what we realize is that with more docks and autonomy, so this is going to be the age of docking stations. There's a lot of docking stations right now people are using, and one remote operator is expected to kind of operate multiple drones and docks. So in this next slide, we're going to showcase some of the features or functionalities that we are bringing in for allowing one-to-many operations. Before that, there is UTM exchange as well. So UTM's integration, UTMs bring in a wealth of data in terms of airspace awareness. For example, dynamic no-fly zones, aircraft information, weather information. And before every operation or every flight operation, users will be able to run these checks via UTMs to see what is the airspace status, and then get a real-time update, and the operation will only start after these checks. So we've also again partnered and integrated with a bunch of UTM organizations who provide this kind of information. We are also getting a lot of other, we are also working with several partners. So I already see Olivier in the audience. So we've been also working with Involi and other platforms to increase our visibility and bring in more airspace awareness. So we'll be announcing them soon. Going back to one-to-many operations. Yes, so for one-to-many operations, what like I said, that a remote pilot is going to be controlling multiple drones and docking stations at the same time. That's the beauty of this whole system. Instead of one-on-one pairing, there's now going to be one operator who will be controlling multiple systems. And how do we make their lives easier? How are they going to control these many systems without, compromising on flight safety or compromising on the operational quality? So we have categorized one-to-many operations in three buckets with which we are bringing in advancements and functionality. So the first up, that is visibility. For example, if you see multiple video feeds from the different operations that's going on, and there is an issue that is affecting the drone's safety in one of those systems that's going on, or one of the flights that's going on, we are going to be providing a highlighted we'll highlight the particular video as well as the drone from the list of videos, and divert the operator's attention via visual as well as audio alarms, so they will instantly know exactly in case there is any issue with any of the operations that's going on, in case there are multiple operations happening. So in the next slide you'll see that we also provide operational notification. So for example, the operator will also receive an email as well as a text notification alerting them of any kind of issue that might arise. Then for the next bit, which is for fleet control. So if you're operating multiple drones, you get a complete overview in the dashboard of all the drone flights and the status of all the flights that are happening at the same time. And users or the operators will also have the ability to set or execute actions that can be applied across the multiple drones instead of selecting one at a time. For example, if the weather has gone bad, you can and there are multiple drones operating in the same region, you can set the functionality for all the drones to return safely back to the docking station. So you could have common controls as well as individually select controls for different flight, and you get a quick overview of all your devices in one single screen. And finally, we are also providing active deconfliction. So again, to ensure that no aircrafts collide mid-air, Flightbase will automatically execute quick actions such as hover, drop, increase altitude to allow a remote operator to take appropriate action and ensure safety. So these were some of the key features again that we are bringing in to make the remote operator's life easier when they are flying when one remote operator is flying multiple drones and devices at the same time. And these features have also been very crucial for us to be able to get BVLOS waivers in multiple deployments across the country. So in the next slide, we can what operators can also do is that they can have the entire information for every flight. They can see it in the flight logs after every flight, and they also have the option to export it as a PDF file for record keeping, as well as export it in a GUTMA file format, which can then be imported into other logging systems which provide much advanced logging capabilities, for example, drone logbook or air data, which you could use to submit your reports for BVLOS approval. So all of these functionalities are help the or the operator to get their approvals and make the process much smoother. So, Flightbase has already been working with different regulatory consultants across, and Akaki has always been guiding us from the FAA's perspective as to what needs to be added onto the dashboard. What can we do to make, again, these operations simpler from the software point of view? We've also received approvals in other geographies via adding or making, bringing in some functionalities. And in the next slide, before I quickly wrap up. So yes, in case any of you require any kind of guidance for FAA, Akaki is just connect away. You can even fill or scan this QR code and fill a quick form, and we'll get in touch with you shortly, or we can help you with your requirements on BVLOS as well. So please scan the QR code and let us know if you need any kind of advice around these approvals, because everybody is right now adopting docs. This is very new. So in for your POCs or your deployments, if any help that you require from the regulatory side, I know it can get very complicated or complex. So if you have any questions, please feel free to fill this form and we will get in touch with you. That's it from my end. Thanks again, everyone. We can move on for Q&A. Yes, over to you, Ajay.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Vaishali. I mean, thanks for showing us how Flightbase can help bring all these different systems required to fly autonomous drones and also to ensure safer operations. And with that, we move towards the final round of the session, which is Q&A. So we have a lot of questions coming in from our audience. So again, the first question, Akaki, this will be for you. And I think you addressed this earlier, but the question is, will shielded waivers require detect and avoid systems?
So, hard question. As a default, no. That's why it's shielded, right? That you don't need if you're in that area, you don't need a DA technology. But again, if you have resources and if you have money for that, please do that and then have it just for situational awareness and so on. I would say at least if you're in the shielded operations and you have that waiver, at least have for situational awareness, like there are a bunch of software like web portals where you can monitor ADS-B out aircraft. So at least to have that, just to know kind of what's going on. As a default, yes, no DAA, but kind of depends if it's like very complex and so on. Yeah.
Right. Another question we have from Darby, again for you, Akaki. Do you know of any companies that have received a non-geographic shielded operation waiver?
Yeah, so I saw the question, and so there are non-geographical waivers. Let's say Census Technologies obtained that with Soaring Eagle, I think, a couple years ago. I haven't heard specifically for the shielded drone dock waivers, non-geographical, but I would say that is coming. I have to go into like database and then really like scrap it and then really see that. But I would say, it's coming.
Got it. Another question we have is, how important are the integration of weather systems going to be for BVLOS approvals?
Yeah, so I actually haven't really addressed the weather. I'm weather geek by myself, so like I love weather. Especially, I would say for the BVLOS rule, what is probably coming, what I haven't really had in a slide, is that there will be some kind of probably weather requirement there. Even in 107, 107.51 is a weather requirement there, right? So I think specifically for BVLOS, there will be some kind of requirements for sure, because if you're flying BVLOS 10 miles out, like how do you know what kind of weather it is there, right? Like, so there are actually multiple, these weather DSP companies who provide these low-level weather services. They are developing pretty fast, and then I have high hope for them. And then I think, yes, it's very important. Weather is usually like overseen, like saying like, oh yeah, it's like we'll just use a METAR. But no, like weather is very, very important. And, like the more weather data you have, believe me, the safer you are.
Right. A lot of questions for you, Akaki. This question is from Paul. How important will cellular connectivity be, do you think, compared to the Part 107?
Yes, so that is that is that is a very good question. And then usually what people say, people think that for the biggest problem for BVLOS, they say like, oh, it's like a DAA. But if you ask me, the biggest problem for the DAA is connectivity. And then, yes, like C2 link, because there are a lot of companies who can really fly BVLOS, but because of like restrictions on their C2 link, they are restricted with that. So yes, there are actually RTCA and EuroK in Europe. They're working on this standard for cellular connectivity for drones. Cellular has its own pros and cons, the latency and like certificates for like zero trust and so on and so on. But I am actually like very open to that idea, because I think we're in an industry where we have to kind of like a crowdsource any technology what is available out there and then use it. So I think cellular will have a very important role in the future for BVLOS for sure.
Got it. We will take a couple of more questions since we are out of time. This question
Yes.
is
Sorry, Ajinkya, I think Jesse wanted to speak to Akaki. He's live as well. Jesse, can you hear us?
Oh.
Hello, Jesse? All right, I think we can move on. In case he comes back, we can always address his question.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, a question from Gil. So the question is, by ensuring full compliance with ASTM standards and having everything completely documented, when providing a BVLOS drone to a third party and an issue occurs, would that ensure that the company that provided the drone is not responsible for the issue since they followed all the compliance requirements?
So yeah, that is again why I'm like really looking forward for this new rule, right? So very good question. And then again, it's a gray area right now. So let's say I have some kind of technology and then I need to somehow third party validate that. So I take my technology, validate with some institute, some research organization, right? But at this point, we don't necessarily have the list of these approved third party validators. So it is kind of like who I'm gonna go. Like I'm gonna ask my friend, or I'm gonna ask some kind of like institute. So that is very like gray area, and then it kind of depends on you. So if this kind of issue arises, yes, I mean, like honestly, yeah, I don't like try to document everything and then who did what, and then I always say like in this in the waiver application form, don't be scared of this like big bag regulator. They're very good people, but be ready to defend yourself and then defend whatever, because every application has its own holes in there, but prepare to defend and have an argument why you did certain things and what was the reason for that. And if you document everything and then if you supply it, I don't know, like you can fight it, like everyone can fight it, everyone can like defend their positions. So just be ready, yeah, just document everything and then push forward.
Got it. Thanks a lot, Akaki. And there are a few more questions, but since we are out of time, we can take them offline. So thank you everyone for joining us, and feel free to reach out to us if you have any more questions. And before we close, Akaki, any closing thoughts from your end?
Yes, I'm really looking forward for new rule. Again, I think the waivers gonna stay here for some time, and everyone, all of the industry, all of us, we have to do our homework, and then what I just mentioned. There's no perfect application. There's always, FAA comes back with like requests for information and so on. They want to talk with you and so on, and then like defend yourself, have a strong argument why you did certain things, and I think everything is possible. So yeah, I'm like, let's fly more and more, and then get really acclimated with the BVLOS.
All right. Thanks a lot, Akaki. It was a pleasure having you for today's session. And Vaishali, any thoughts from your end?
No, I think it was a wonderful session with a lot of engagement from the audience as well. So thank you everyone for sticking around till the end. And I hope you've had a lot of insights and information that you may be looking for regarding waivers and approvals. Again, in case you need any further information, we have dropped the link of the form as well on the chat. So please feel free to reach out to us there and we'll be happy to help you. Akaki is going to be available to guide you through with all your requirements around BVLOS approvals. So yes, thank you again. It was lovely seeing you all. And until the next webinar.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks again. Have a great day.
Thank you. Okay, we're out.